From the Spacebird Media Studios, it's Roxanne and Ace Unlimited.
Hey, welcome to Friday. We're Roxanne and Ace, and this is Unlimited. Thanks to our friends at Birmingham Mortgage Group and My Brother's Cup. Always good to play catch up. We like to talk about Jesus. We like to laugh. We like to cover some things that we need to dig deep, especially in Lent. You know, it's that season where we're like crying out those bad habits and those, and some of them are a little easier to let go of than others. But how you doing this week?
Hey, if I were any better, there'd be trouble. I'm having a great time. We're getting ready to have a big goodbye for our youngest son, who's going to be headed off to live in Florida. You know, you give birth to your babies and you don't want them to ever leave you. And then they do. They have to go live their lives.
Does that mean you have a place to stay in Florida whenever you want?
Yeah.
Ooh.
And the wheels started turning. It's about an hour from Disney. And so, yeah, we're excited for him, and it's all good. Hey, I don't know. I was asleep. I didn't get the news that Ty Pennington nearly died. What?
I was like, wait a minute. Like after all the extreme home makeovers that he was a part of, like near death, and then this happened.
Yeah. He had an abscess in his throat, and he kept thinking, and this is so typical. You know, when's this sore throat gonna go? I've had this sore throat a long time, and then you don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Until, he's going to see the Barbie premiere, and he's like, throat closes. It's a giant abscess that kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and cut off his breathing. He had to be, it was bad. I mean, he nearly died from it. And he said, while I don't enjoy the fact I had to go through it, he said, so much good has come of it because I realized how loved I am. That's the first thing. And then the next thing, he says he wants his 60s to be just this great celebration of life and to do the things he's always wanted to do because he treasures every day now.
Yeah. Well, and that's great because, like, I always tell people as they get older, I'm like, you know what? I love my 40s were a little rocky. My 50s were awesome. 60s, I'm like, yeah, let's bring it, because I don't look like the Ropers or Maude and Walter. Like, it's like we're doing our best to thrive, right? So, I'm glad he's doing all right. I know that for a lot of people, this week was election week. So, we won't go into too much there, but if you went to the polls, yay, thank you for that. Whatever happens, it's in God's hands. This is just our reminder. Civic duty, do your thing, pray before you go in. But man, it's exhausting. Like this time of year, or when it comes around every four, I'm like, Lord, I still have it in me. Like the older I get, I'm more mad at the country. And I'm like, yeah, Canada might not be such a bad thing at times, so.
Well, the last presidential election, the lines to vote were outrageous, but you were just so hungry to get there to vote and to have your voice be heard because many of us want change.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like we're going to get a whole lot of change. And that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, so true. Well, and I think it's funny, though, that out of this week, the bigger to do was that Facebook was shut down for like an hour in the middle of the week. Like it was like you couldn't log in, you couldn't post, you couldn't check it, it was giving you password errors. I was like, let it burn to the ground. Just let it go. I'm done. I'm out. What? I can't log in? Oh, what a shame. But
yeah, I'm not on it like I used to be. I'm not quite as obsessed. So like normally I would have known and it would have been disastrous, but I, kind of slept right through that. So
I just envisioned that scene from Airplane where the guy unplugs the runway lights. Just kidding. Like that's what somebody was doing in the server room, so it is what it is.
Let's talk, shall we, about restoration. Really powerful stuff from Gregory Dickow. He is a pastor out of Chicago, and I love his books and I love his preaching. And he just talks about total restoration is on the other side. A lot of people are going through a whole bunch right now. One of my closest friends just says, I'm riddled with depression, and I get to the point where I don't want to take another breath. And Joel 2:25 is where God says, "So I will restore you the years that the swarming locust has eaten." You
Mm.
know, have you had a year or a month or a week where you felt like you were being eaten up by locusts? It's
Yeah.
been so horrible. Well, what we need to remember, according to the pastor, and I think it's really smart, is that victory, the finished work on the cross. You know, you think it's over. I mean, you think someone nailed to a cross, suffering that much, that it's done,
Yeah.
that we can kiss everything goodbye. There was another girl out in the street this week, Ace, who was just covered up in drugs, dirty, scared, has a court date coming up. And she says, "My life is over. It's over for me. I've had too many chances." I just had to take her and say, "Our God is the God that parts the oceans.
Yeah.
His son came back from the dead. There's nothing he can't resurrect, and that includes you."
Yeah. Well, and I was talking with a friend of mine this week about that very thing because I think so many times intellectually we talk ourselves out of faith. We talk ourselves out of our crown, to quote Revelation, don't let anyone take your crown. That's something that we surrender. We're like, yeah, and faith is, yeah, I believe in God and I know he can work, but probably not in this situation. What? Like, come on. Like, that's the whole purpose to have faith is to have that peace. And even I remember on a missions trip several years ago, our mantra that week was that fear is a choice, right? That we just
Mm.
give over all of our emotions to fear and then we lose sleep and we let anxiety get the best of us and while danger is a very real thing, fear is a choice that we allow ourselves to walk into. So we have to stop talking ourselves out of our restoration, out of what Christ gave for us so that we can relinquish and go, okay, I can't handle this, give it to God, and that's what he's been waiting on.
Well, and for me, one of the best remedies for fear is to take action. Even if it's a tiny step, you feel better. You can sit and fret and worry, or you can take a step toward making a change. And I think that's super important. You could just hop right over to that phone and call Teren Newell. You've heard us talking about him.
Mm-hmm.
He's amazing, kind, smart, wonderful, good family guy, and he's built a huge business. And the reason is his reputation. He just takes care of people, doesn't he, Ace?
Yeah, he does great. And we're in our homes as a result of that. And in checking with him this week, he now has a partnership with Smith Douglas. They're builders and they have price points between 250 and 350 that can get you into your home. Like you don't think that you can build from the ground up. You don't think that you can be in a situation, even be in a home that's big enough for your family. This is the time. Like check in with Teren as he's, entering these new chapters now, being able to help families in Alabama and Florida. He'll take great care of you. So set up that phone call today, 205-259-1656 or bhammortgage.com.
We always should be about improving our relationships. And so there's some relationship advice, how to always be improving. I think some of these are really powerful. The first one is give people permission to change.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking about now? What do you want to do? And be okay with that.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, we also have to allow ourselves, like we don't necessarily see the change because we've been with ourselves every day, right? It's not until we wake up one day and go, wait, when did I get crow's feet? But it's one of those where change is going to happen. We are going to get better. We are going to move to the next thing and then celebrating that. Like my wife and I had that discussion not too long ago. She's like, I've always wanted to do X and maybe Y. And I'm like, you know what? If God's giving you that passion and that desire of your heart now, just wait and see what doors he opens, because if it's happening because he wants it to, his timing will make that happen.
And she's so talented and does so many things. I can't imagine her doing another venture, but here we go.
Right. I just buckle up.
Hey, beware of phubbing. What is that? It is, somebody's taking a break in the conversation. I'm going to quick look at this.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever been to lunch with somebody who's doing this?
Yeah.
It makes people feel incredibly disrespected and unheard.
Yeah. Well, and that's why for the longest time, I wouldn't do my Apple Watch, because while I wanted it for the ability to like track my steps and all the health stuff, it's also that, because, when we were growing up, if you looked at your watch, it only did one thing. It told you the time. And so you're like,
Mhm.
so clearly whoever you were with, it was more important to wherever you were going. And so that was a distraction. So now to me, it's still when I look down, am I getting, am I giving the people around me the incentive to realize, oh yeah, evidently Ace doesn't want to be in this setting. And that's not always the case, but that's the message that it sends if that's what you're doing. So between technology, give yourself a chance to be in the moment.
One thing that's helped me with that is I'll say, Siri, set an alarm for an hour from now. And then I'm not worried about, jaw jabbing and missing where I'm supposed to be when.
Right.
And
Fair.
it takes the pressure off. And the alarm goes off. It's like, oh, wow,
Yeah.
time flies. It's been 2 minutes. I don't
Yeah.
know if that helps anyone, but I'll
That's a good
throw
one.
that out there. All right. Never underestimate the power of a compliment.
Mm.
There's a friend of mine named Missy who is just one of the most lovely people in the world, but she affirms me in such a powerful and genuine way every time I see her that I just want to go stand by her
Yeah.
and soak up some of Missy.
Yeah.
The people that do that well are amazing.
Yeah. Well, and I think because my mom is great at that, like whether it's the lady, checking out the groceries or the waitress, that brought us our food, like it doesn't matter. My mom wants them to feel good about themselves because
Aw.
her setting growing up, she didn't always have that. And so she's awesome at it. And I always have to remind her when she's like, I don't know why I'm here. I'm like, the Lord has you complimenting the world, Mom. Have you not watched you in that setting? She's
Aw.
like, well, I guess. And then that's my compliment to her, and watching her be like, okay, so recognizing things that people do well and then shine that spotlight on them.
And this reminded me so much of Ace McKay. This is the sweetest thing. When there's somebody who's hurting, whether it's a child, a spouse, a teacher, or someone random, you can say, do you want to be helped, heard, or hugged?
Mm,
So that you've talked about this quite a bit
yeah,
of really being open to not just men want to fix things, which sometimes is great. Sometimes I want Wayne to fix it.
yeah,
Other times it's great to just have somebody who will listen to you.
sure. Well, and I think all three serve a purpose throughout the day, because my wife, she has a ritual in the morning. Like the first thing she does when she comes to the hallway, no matter what I'm doing, if I'm on my phone, reading a book, listening to music, whatever, I have to stop what I'm doing, get up and hug her. Like that's how the day starts. And
Aw.
sometimes that's how, the day ends too. But in that, like you have to know the moment. And I love that you brought up that, like, you tell Wayne, I need you to just take care of this, because for not just for women, but both ways, like, hey, this is not in my wheelhouse, but this is your thing. I need you to just, because I know at some point she's going to do the same to me. Hey, I don't want to take my car for an oil change. Will you take it? Yes, baby. Can I vacuum it out too? Is that okay too? Because she knows that I'm a clean
Ooh,
freak.
listen to
she's
that.
she's like, you do whatever. She's like, just take it. So yeah, you have to share that responsibility.
Well, one thing you could do as a couple is share a cup of the Roxanne blend. It is marvelous. It has a little pecan, little butterscotch. And that sounds bizarre, but it just smells like happiness, tastes even better.
Yep.
And you will know when you purchase it that you are helping to proclaim the gospel of Jesus around the world. It's just the best thing. It's a great gift for somebody.
Yeah, it's great now with the official K cups too. So that was the big push for the longest time. So it's a real deal. So find out more at mybrotherscup.com, or just go to roxanneandace.com and order yours today.
So Bill Gates has a lot invested in AI. Let's say that right out of the gate. A lot of people have reported that now this is stunning, that 40% of the jobs around the world are going to be affected by AI. You know, one of our sons is a graphic artist. So if you're looking in this or you're on the computer, you say, draw that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's kind of a scary proposition for a lot of people. And so they went to Bill Gates, who again is invested in AI.
Yeah.
And he said, think about history, think about farming. When we were so caught up in really not wanting to evolve in basic farming, we became a lot more efficient. And look how things have evolved to create more jobs. He says it will eventually solve itself, that issue. What do you think?
Well, I think he's right. I think there are ways to use AI in your current job to help you be more creative, more efficient, maybe, just to take some task off of your plate. But it will open. So while at some point maybe the job you have does get replaced with AI, there will be other jobs that you are qualified for based on that was a job you once had. Somebody's got to always be ahead of the next thing, right? So I think the jobs that you're going to, while the ones that exist now will be replaced at some point, there will be something in the future that will be there for you. So I agree. And it gives me peace of mind, because if a brainiac like him is not like, oh yes, the Terminator is coming, then I'm okay. Like I don't have to go, all right, it's what we feared.
He's busy giving away his billions every year. We could use one of those billions to head
Sure.
this way. What do you think about that?
I mean, yeah.
Why are we told that weeping may endure for a night? I always thought it was scripture's kind of confusing at times.
Yeah.
Psalm 35 identifies hardship as weeping. And in digging into this scripture, it's really, God's word is so cool. If you think of it, it's just so cool.
Yeah.
What it's actually saying, according to scholars who've been at this a very long time, it's comforting. It's okay, you're crying now. It's rough now. In this world, you will have tribulation. Jesus told us that, but it's only for a little while. It
Yeah.
will pass. And that's comforting to me.
Well, and I think you and I have talked about this at some point because we're big Tom Hanks fans, but his phrase that he has learned years ago that has served him well in Hollywood is "this too shall pass." So it ties in nicely with the Psalms here, because that should be our mantra. Even when things are great, this too shall pass. When things are terrible, this too shall pass. Because the thing I love too about the Psalms is so many of them are written by David, and he was one of the most, like, he was at, David is, after God's own heart. But in that, he went after Bathsheba when he got lazy and decided that, he wanted his own way, and, and had been in the spotlight for a long time. And we have to get to that point where, yes, you can look to David and the Psalms to help you process the things in your own life. But then when you say, like, my favorite thing about David's life was that he was playing his guitar in the field and they sent for him. Hey, come on, we need a king. Like, I want to be in the field playing my bass, and hey, Ace, we need this. Okay, Lord, let's go. And so I think that's the thing, because whether you're new to your faith or you're trying to expand during Lent or whatever, even to pray, God, send for me like you did David, or give me a place that you need me to be, so that I'm not looking for the next job, or I'm not looking for the next ministry opportunities. You are coming to me and going, boop. Or reputation even, it's that, hey, we need, and then those are the things you're like, okay, I got this job based on what I've been doing, and I didn't have to look for it. It was just on merit alone. And to me, that's where God works, when we just stand back and go, wow, I always wanted to do this, and now I'm getting to do it.
Oh, that's so good. I love that. Well, the new trend on TikTok, I like to talk about TikTok.
Yes.
I have to be careful about being on TikTok because I like to laugh. And there's a lot of funny stuff on there. But the new trend is to not have any eyebrows. And let me just tell you, as someone who naturally now, due to lichen planopilaris, which is the name of my disease, I don't have any. Let me just tell you, it's not attractive.
I don't understand this being a trend. Why this, and my daughter is in cosmetology, and I even asked her, I'm like, why? And she's like, I don't know, Dad. I don't know.
I
And
mean,
so,
people, and now there's different techniques to shave your eyebrows. Don't do it, because when you mess with them, they can go away.
Yeah.
So Oh,
And my thought is, I mean, as someone who obviously has some eyebrows, I'm thinking if they go away, then they're just going to come back and be more unruly, and then I got to try to tame them. Like, Lord help me.
really. It's just, and you know what's in one moment is going to go out, so we can't wear skinny jeans. We talked about that.
Yeah.
Now the pants are getting outright. Now they're not just a little wide. They're like you're wearing a bust from the waist down. They've gotten so voluminous, you can barely tell there's a person in there.
Yeah.
That's not attractive.
I mean, unless you're jumping out of a plane and then your pants expand to help glide you to the ground. I don't get it. For Roxanne and Ace Unlimited, always glad when we get a chance to educate ourselves, but also know that we are helping those that could be in a really rough situation, especially when it comes to relationships.
Well, and how churches deal with this issue. It's very interesting. Our guest is senior pastor of the chapel in Winfield, West Virginia, an ordained minister, a certified biblical counselor, and he's written many books. The latest, he's an editor, and he did this with a group of friends who do counseling at the church. I think that's fascinating. It's called Caring for Families Caught in Domestic Abuse. We're thrilled to have Chris Moles with us. Welcome.
Hey, thank you guys. It's great to be here. I'm excited to be part of the journey with you.
So, Chris, take us back a little bit. And where did your heart have to line up with God to say, this is where your ministry needs to move in this direction?
Yeah, so it's totally providential. I mean, all the credit has to go to the Lord because I was really hesitant. I wouldn't say it was a Jonah moment, but it wasn't too far off. I was working part-time in corrections. I was working with drug offenders. Really enjoyed my role as an educator. I was doing life skills and parenting classes. And then they approached me. This was in the local corrections department about being a co-lead in a batterer intervention group. And it was for men convicted of domestic violence crimes. And I said no multiple times. In fact, it wasn't until they told me what they'd pay me per hour that I broke and said, I think the Lord's calling me to lead this group. So it really was providential. But you know what happened in that time, especially that first year of my training and my exposure and working with men, was that God just really captivated my heart. And I say often, I think I'm a better pastor, a better father, a better husband, a better neighbor, because of the years that I've spent working with violent men and how the gospel uniquely intersects with the violent heart and really reveals a lot to all of us about God's redemptive work.
Well, it didn't just happen out of nowhere. We hear that abusers are often victims of abuse themselves. Is that true?
It is true among criminal abusers. That's the only area that the culture has really been able to measure. Most abusers who have found themselves in the criminal justice system tend to have a higher rate of adverse childhood experiences, somewhere between 6 and 7 on a scale of 10, as opposed to, other folks, random folks like myself. I have a 1 on that scale, or less than a 1. So we do see that among criminal offenders. But for your listeners, this is probably important. Once you reach that level of criminality, you more than likely have been participating in acts of coercive control for a long time. And certainly it would lend itself to believe that perhaps you experienced those modeled for you as a child, even in your childhood. So certainly that's true. We don't know necessarily about aspects of emotional abuse or psychological abuse or what we might encounter primarily in the church, but it's certainly worth prying into if you're a counselor.
So before we get into the how to help those that are in situations where, the man is being abusive, or the woman for that matter, if I identify in myself based on my past or my father's or my grandfather's, or that I've been to prison, where do I start? Like what is that? Okay, I can identify that I'm going to be a problem to anyone as I move forward. So where does that begin for them?
I actually think if that's the scenario, you're probably farther ahead than the vast majority of individuals. That powerful aspect of self-reflection, and of course, when we combine that with the notion of Holy Spirit conviction and community accountability that the church can bring about, I think it amplifies that. But that idea of self-reflection that identifies these patterns in myself is really one of the first steps of our process, which we call information. We talk about information, transformation, and reformation with abusive individuals. And so getting to a point of self-reflection is a huge win. It's not the only win, obviously, because confession is not necessarily repentance. And certainly confession is not evidenced repentance or the fruits of repentance. It's a long process. But that's a huge win because most individuals, and I love this quote from Paula Silva and Focus Ministries in their book, Violence Among Us. The authors wrote, abusive men see themselves as misunderstood, not wrong. And I think that's been one of the more powerful realities for me, having worked thousands of case hours with abusive men, that the self-deception and the corrupt perceptions of the world are as significant as the corrupt behaviors that they exhibit.
Well, just so that I fully understand, if you could define what domestic abuse or violence is and how common is it?
Yeah, so it's one of the things I love about this new book. So many of my friends, and we wanted to bring together workers who had significant case hours from a church-based perspective. And so we will all slightly, I wouldn't say disagree, but see different perspectives of a definition. We often say in our work, if you've seen one case of abuse, you've seen one case of abuse. They are complex, they are different, they are distinct, but they all tend to contain three core elements. The first is an abuse of power. Abuse occurs when an individual has an advantage, a position, power, whether it be being bigger, faster, stronger, economic control, respect in the community, maybe the pastoral position. That is something that can be corrupted and abused. Second is patterns. Abuse occurs, although it can occur in incidents, it's usually found in patterns of incidents that are interconnected and related. So abuse is power down, power over, right? Pushing down through patterns of behavior, not just one single incident, but multiple incidents. And then it's motivated by pride, but then also intended to exercise some form of control. So at the end of the day, we're controlling people, circumstances, outcomes. And so that's why I personally say, and we all have some slight variations in the book, but I would say that domestic abuse is an abuse of power manifested in selfishly motivated patterns of behavior intended to exercise or maintain control over one's partner.
But they say that they're misunderstood. What
Sure.
are we misunderstanding about them?
So if you have a corrupt worldview, and this is something that my friend Greg Wilson brings out well in our book, and then also in the book he co-wrote with Jeremy Pierre, When Home Hurts. If you have a corrupted perception, it will quickly justify, rationalize behavior that normally would be considered sinful or at the very least inappropriate. So it's not that I strangled my wife, right? It's that I had to get her under control. So now what I've done is I've shifted the blame to say she was out of control, and the greatest means for me to bring her back into control for her good was to strangle her. Now, of course, you hear those words and you're like, that's not true. Mm-hmm. But in the mind of an abusive person, the rationalization will allow them to say things like that. That's why confrontational ministry is a key element here, like we're taught in Galatians 6. If any of you is caught in a sin, you who are spiritual should restore such a one in all gentleness. We want to confront sin in a gentle and winsome way and then leave the consequences to God. We'll participate in them because a man will reap what he sows.
That's intense.
It's intense work, but honestly, I have so thoroughly enjoyed this work. It is hard to believe how many headaches I've created through counseling sessions or how many nights I've been sleepless, but it has been such a joy to serve victims by doing work that no one else has been willing to do.
Well, and to serve offenders,
Sure.
Because you're sitting across from maybe somebody who's been violent, and the tendency is to dislike that person immensely. I mean, we're human.
Yeah.
But so that leads to my question. How is a biblical approach better or more effective in dealing with a person who wants to gain control over another person through violent means?
Yeah, I think it's the most effective way to address violence against women is to address the hearts of men. I really believe that. And I think the gospel is indicative of that. Jesus himself hung on a cross designed for a violent man. He encouraged us not to resist violent people in kind. Paul taught us to overcome evil with good. So there are plenty of examples, illustrations, reminders, and instruction in the scriptures that we are a people of peace. As much as it depends upon us, we should be living at peace with everyone. And peace is not a passive stand on the sideline, hope things work out. Peace is an active engagement in not just reducing conflict, but addressing the cause of hurt. I see that in, I think it's 1 Thessalonians 5:14. We admonish the unruly. And at the same time, at the end of the passage, we hold on to the hurting. And in doing that, we're holding off the cause of their hurt. So there's a real rich theology here of active peacemaking that I think the church alone can do. So to illustrate that really quick, I think the church has some punitive acts. I certainly think church discipline's part of our arsenal, and we should be using it. But our first response, as I said earlier, is gentleness, winsomeness, the power of the gospel, because that's our greatest weapon. The world can subdue people with the sword. I've been in that world for years in corrections. I've seen the sword alter behavior, but I've never seen the sword change a heart. That's where the cross of Jesus Christ is more powerful than any weapon that the world can wield. So we partner as good Romans 13 citizens when there's criminal behavior, but we embrace the Matthew 18 responsibility of confronting those that are in sin and holding them accountable.
So then I ask this of you, because there's several books that touch on all the things that you're talking about. What's in this book that really can help people get over that hump? Because I think we get resources, or people go to this group or talk to this church, and they're still in the same abusive relationship and they don't know what to do from here.
This is worth the price of the book, but I still want you to buy it because it's going to be a helpful resource for you. We have attempted, I could have tried to write this book on my own, and I've written other books, and certainly the team has written some of the best books on this subject. Darby Strickland, Is It Abuse? Greg Wilson, When Home Hurts, Joy Forrest with Call to Peace, and so on. We have seen really good work produced. My own book, The Heart of Domestic Abuse. But what we wanted to illustrate here in caring for families was a team-based approach to care. And that is the secret sauce. Secularly speaking, the number one predictor of helping a man avoid recidivism, that is helping them stay out of trouble in the future, making the behavioral changes, is a community coordinated response. I think the same could be said of the church, but what if the church, in addition to having the accountability from multiple sides, counselors, church-based interventionists, people who are doing education, mentors, and advocates, all coming from the church, but we have the power of the gospel as well. And that's the real heartbeat of the book. Whether you're dealing with trauma-informed care, like Beth Broom's chapter, or your church-based interventions that Kirsten Christensen helps us with, or any of the other chapters that we wrapped up in this book, you see that the church and individuals in the church, as members of the body of Christ, have roles that they can play from multiple angles to really see effective heart change for the abusive individual, if they want it, right? And effective care for the abused.
So good. The book is called Caring for Families Caught in Domestic Abuse. And of course, Pastor Chris Moles has been our guest. Thank you for your wisdoms. Get this book and help those, whether it's starting with yourself or others that you have ministries with. But Chris, thanks for what you're championing, man. We appreciate your insights today.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for allowing us to share the good word that peace is possible.
I will say, though, as we get into this week's vibes, my vibe right now, and it actually stemmed from last weekend's conversation about the whole Pop-Tarts, yeah. You asked me if I was a Pop-Tart fan. I am. Well, now the trend on TikTok is doing homemade Pop-Tarts that apparently are better than what's in the box in the stores. And apparently that's the case. I haven't made them yet, but I have the stuff because life is busy, but I will get to that. So I have a report that's going to come. I'm going to do cherry and strawberry and maybe a chocolate one if I can maybe get some Nutella or something. But anyway, yeah, homemade Pop-Tarts is like the thing, way better. And I'm hoping that maybe calorie wise, it might be a little less too.
Is it in the air fryer?
No, you make them in the oven using pie crust. Like you just do your pie crust and then you just make the little creases with the forks and put the filling inside. So yeah, I'm down. I'll report back to you on that one.
let us know. Okay, 2 things I'm vibing on. I can't just share one. I'm going to make one super short.
Mhm.
For Walking Dead fans, I know a lot of people gave up on them, 15 seasons ago.
Yep.
But Michonne and Rick
They're
this
back.
week, the scene where they listen,
It's
where
the scene
they
we've been waiting on.
it was so good. I was like, because it's
So I'm going to be honest
oh
with you about something. So yes, I agree.
yes.
That scene was fantastic. That
Oh.
scene should have been the end of the finale of the regular show. That would have been the way to end it. Because everything at that point was find
Mhm.
Rick, find Rick, find Rick.
Yeah.
And then she finds him. Like that would have been like,
I
and
think
then,
the actor was not available. I can't
Yeah.
remember his name now, and that's really sad because I am a fan of the show, but the reunion of them was great. And then, but onward, if you have not seen Sly, the documentary on Sylvester Stallone
So
on
good.
Netflix, you've seen it?
Yeah.
Oh, listen, my respect, I've always respected him. Rocky's one of my favorite movies. And
Mhm.
I just love that movie.
Yep.
And there's a lot of talk about that, but to look at him being beaten off a polo horse by his insane father, the
Yeah.
crazy stuff. He and his brother just dropped off in children's homes because, I mean, his mother was this classic beauty, but they didn't have time for their children.
Yeah.
And he was just destitute, and how he just didn't give up and tried to reinvent himself and realized he's really Rambo and Rocky, and that's what people want. And
Yeah.
just the turmoil. Oh, it's so good.
And as a musician, what I connected with Sly on that was he used his pain to create something that gave him a voice. And then he was able to say the things that he would never have been able to say in real life. But he got it out of his system through a character that either he played or he wrote. And I loved that. Like that, to me, that is such a spark for us when we're looking for how to deal with our pain or how to deal with our past. Put it into something creative, write poetry, write a song, play an instrument, learn to beat a drum, be an actor, be a producer, any of those things, because then you have that creative beauty that comes out of an awful upbringing or situation or traumatic experience. So if I wasn't already a Sly fan, I'm with you 100%. I'm down with that. That's a great vibe. So hopefully this
Thank
week
you.
has been something of education and inspiration, and we hope you have a great one. We'll see you again next Friday. Roxanne, I love you.
I love you. Keep your eyebrows. Okay?
Yes,
Keep 'em.
absolutely. I'd be afraid to cut them off at this point. Also, thanks to My Brothers Cup and Birmingham Mortgage Group. We'll see you next week.
You've been listening to Roxanne and Ace Unlimited. To make sure you don't miss future shows, you can subscribe anywhere you like to podcast and catch up on anything you've missed. Find out more at RoxanneandAce.com. Roxanne and Ace Unlimited is a production of Spacebird Media.